But it also makes us think too. What does everyone else want to know?
Hello, and a warm welcome back to In Search of 42. My name is Felix Becker, and I'm, of course, your very own success coach on this journey we call life. As before, I'm sharing an amazing conversation with an incredible human with you today. LoPrimo started out wanting to become a firefighter, but he has since turned to the IT world and now success coaching. What can I say? Another success coach. Anyways, Kyle has a wonderful story, incredible wisdom to share. You're going to get a lot out of this conversation between us. If you like this stuff, please remember, like, rate and review, share, subscribe, do all those things because it helps us reach more people. And the more people we can reach, the more people we can help. But let's get all that nonsense out of the way and get right into my conversation with Kyle LoPrimo. All right, Kyle, let's do this again. We did it last time and had some technical issues, but we found some time to reconnect, and here we are. So let's get right back into it. Who are you?
Who am I? Good morning, Felix. How are you doing? Who am I? My name is Kyle Primo, and I am a life and success coach. Um, I've been coaching for about 5 years, um, and doing that while working full time in technology. I'm also a dad of two gorgeous girls and have a lovely wife.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think we connected on that last time already. I also have two daughters of my own, and it's just being a girl dad is something special, and I
It
wouldn't
is.
change it for the world.
I sometimes bust dad's chops. They say, tell him if you don't have a daughter, you're half a dad.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's probably true. They really humble you in some ways.
Oh yeah,
It's a wonderful experience, and
I've learned more from them than anyone else on this earth.
I agree. I agree. They've really made me a better person. They still continue to this day to make me a better person. Even just with the questions they ask and the curiosity they have of the world and the way they push my own boundaries.
Hmm.
It's wonderful,
Oh
wonderful
yeah,
experience.
those boundaries get challenged.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we talked a lot about this last time already, but obviously that recording ended up somewhere in the ether. So let's get back to the beginning. You started out actually trying to go into the fire service. So let's hear that story again.
Yeah, and when I got out of high school, um, I my dad's a New York City fireman, or was a New York City fireman. He's retired. He's in his 90s now. But when you grow up in a fireman's house, when you're a fireman's son, you spend a lot of time at the firehouse. You're on the truck. You're going out on runs with them. You end up doing a lot of those things, and it feels very comfortable after a while. Like family. And when I was going through high school, I was like, I'm not going to college. I want to be a fireman. So get out of high school. I took the written test, took the physical, aced both of them. But then there's a waiting period between when you do that and when you actually get called to go to the academy and go through training and all that fun stuff. But during that process, my dad was like, listen, you need to do something to get a job while you're waiting for this. You can't just, you know, got to grow up. So I ended up going to a 2 years tech school and got into technology, and I got my first job doing that. Um, and then I got a call. I'm like, great, I'm going to the fire academy. My dad's like, no, you're not. I was like, what do you mean? This is all I've wanted to do. He's like, I didn't bust my ass on this job for you to do the same thing. I want more for you. You can't argue with that, or I couldn't argue with that. And I did a little bit, but it doesn't work out that way. So I stayed in technology, and history being what it is, I've been in there for 35 some odd years. Um, and a few different roles, a few different uh, technologies that you get into in business IT, whether it's collaboration or video or switch routing or security, stuff like that. And I was going through my own transition probably about 7 years ago at this point. And I was like, what direction do I want to go here? Because I was tired of doing what I was doing. And a buddy of mine got me turned on to the Success Principles by Jack Canfield. Read the book. I'm like, wow, this is great. And I was already employing some of those different tactics to move myself along. But Jack also has this training they call Train the Trainer, which they train you how to be a success coach. And I did that. I was like, wow, I like this. I'm good at it. I was able to help people out even while I was going through the training. So I went down that road. Now, as coaches and as anyone who's, I'll use the term self-aware, you always ask why. Simon Sinek has made a whole career on asking, well, find your why. And I hadn't found that for a while. And then one morning I was down in the basement here at the house and I was working out and I wasn't necessarily thinking of it at the time, but I was like, oh shit, epiphany time. It hit me like a ton of bricks of what my why was and how I connected back to wanting to be a fireman. And it's that my dad was there to help people. He was there to serve people. He was there to serve the people of the city of New York. And that's what I found attractive. That became my why is that, granted, I'm not pulling people out of burning buildings, but I'm pulling them out of the fires of their own inaction and misaction. And, it almost brought me to tears at the time. And I was like, I had to stop what I was doing. And I just sat there for a good 10, 15 minutes and just processed all that in my head. And I was like, this is my call to action. This is what's driving me to be a coach and to be better and to learn and to serve others and to really help people get out of the shitstorm that they put themselves in.
Right. No, I can so relate to that. My first coaching program that I put together was based on my own experience with career burnout, and so I called it Phoenix because you're rising from the ashes. And I too want to help people, pull them out of the burn pit that is their life right now. And the burn pit idea came from my experience with the military. So I can relate to that on so many levels. And I think having that epiphany of what is your why am I doing that is so important. So I'm wondering what was it about these success principles? What did you learn from them? What are they, and why did they resonate with you so much?
They resonated with me for a few reasons. Number one, they were effective. Number two, you realize that everything is on you. You can't blame the government. You can't blame your financial situation. You can't blame your upbringing. You can't blame your parents. Although I tried to initially with that initial thing, right? You can't blame any of that. It's on you. It's your own way of thinking and most of all, how you react to the world around you. We have these events that happen to us every day. Small ones, someone cutting you off on the road, or oh crap, the hot water heater burnt out, or oh God, I got fired. How you react to those events defines whether that event is positive or negative. Can you turn that into something positive where it works for you and you learn from it and you grow from it? Or you're going to be a crab ass and flip off the guy that just cut you off and be a jerk the rest of the day. So it's lessons like that within the success principles that really showed me is like, I could write my own ticket out of this. And I did, quite honestly, and that's what he's teaching in there. And there's a couple of hundred different things that he goes into in the book. Some of them are more in depth than others. But that's the route that I chose to go down to really help people out. It's you've done this to yourself. You've put yourself in this situation. It wasn't anybody else. He likes to use the story. Have you ever heard anybody complain about gravity? No. Who complains about gravity? You can't do anything about it unless you're in outer space, and there's only a handful of people that have actually done that. So when you start complaining about all that stuff that is totally out of your control, it becomes useless, and you're expending energy, you're expending effort and time on something that there's no chance in hell of you winning or being in control of the outcome, except how you respond to it.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, I had I don't know if you ever read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willing,
I
but
have.
it's very much sounds like aligned with that, and that was an eye opening experience for me because no one ever showed me that way before. As a matter of fact, growing up, if anything, my parents were just complaining about everything. And so I grew up to be complaining about everything, and I never took ownership of the actions. I always thought it was externalized. Oh, the world is this, the world is that. They don't do this, they don't do that, and as a result, I'm this way. And it was always about them and they, as opposed to me taking ownership of my own life and the actions that I do, and the feelings that I have, and the emotions that I have, and the thoughts that I have, and the actions that I'm going to take. And I still think extreme ownership should be required reading for every high school student in this country, because it's such a profound insight to have that you are indeed the steward of your own ship, and you have the opportunity to change your path forward if you do that deep introspection into yourself, who you are, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and taking ownership for your own actions. So I love that. I truly do. That's amazing. Um,
One of the stories that Jocko tells in there, and this is where you get down to leadership is everyone's responsibility, right? Is when they were going out for a deployment and their radio guy got sidelined, and he had to make sure everyone knew how to reprogram their radios so they could deal with or communicate with the different teams and companies and even other countries' forces. So he was like, he literally took one of the guy's radios in his platoon, erased everything on it, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Said, "All right, reprogram it." And he goes like, I he said, "You don't know how to? Okay, that's fine. Everyone, erase your radio right now, reprogram it this way you know how to do it in the field." And it became taking, granted, leaders have their own stuff, but we all need to be responsible for our own radios. We need to be responsible for our own outcomes.
Yes, absolutely. And taking on that ownership can be incredibly hard. That does require a lot of work. It took a lot of work for me, but it's, if I even think back 2 or 3 years from now, how my life was compared to now, it's so much better now that I have a different perspective, an open perspective, and I do take ownership over my own actions, and unapologetically, to be honest with you. I mean, I will do things and say things that other people will find rude or uncomfortable, and I was like, you know what, I'm unapologetic, this is my life, and I'm living it the way I want to, and I stand for this principle, and there's nothing you can say or do that will change that. So you went through that success coaching academy. At the same time, you were still working in IT, though. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. I still am now, yes.
Yeah. So, what about, what are sort of the commonalities in those tracks, these parallel tracks? Is there anything from the, success that you incorporate into IT, and from IT that you learned that you can, use in your coaching practice?
Oh, absolutely. So, in the role that I'm a what we call a pre-sales engineer, which means we keep the salespeople honest with what they're trying to sell. But you often walk a tightrope of making sure the technology works and making sure you can still get the sale in. So at any given time, you're working more with the customer or working more for the company or the sales guy, and you know. But what's an underlying theme there is having a relationship with both of those people, especially the customer, because you want them to see you as a trusted partner. You want them to see you as somebody as I could go to this guy, and if I ask him a question, I'm going to get the answer that I need, not necessarily the answer that I want. I'm going to get the answer that I need. So there are some really big parallels there. Also, with just being in the role that I was in, we're solving problems all day long. And as a coach and as a business owner, you're solving problems every day, multiple times a day. It's just like last time when we did our recording. That recording didn't work. Well, what do we get? All right, let's do it over. You work through a process of trying to fix what that is to make it better so that it doesn't happen again. Um, so yes, there's some big parallels there with my primary job as well as my coaching practice. And sometimes I switch one side of my brain off and turn the other one on, and it is something that I learned to do. Excuse me. Something that I learned to do a while back. And when I first started trying to do that, it was confusing as all hell.
Yeah. Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
dealing with
yeah.
people? Am I dealing with bits and bytes?
Right. That I know that happens to me a lot. I'm sometimes in the conversation with a friend or someone, and some of these coaching principles come up, and all of a sudden I find myself, well, am I coaching this person right now, or are we just having a friendly conversation?
Yeah.
So, right. So I totally get that. So, but for the coaching side of things, so you went through this success training, which
Hmm.
it has some coaching to it, but then you went back and actually got a life coach certification as well. So,
Right.
what led you to that path, and how did that change your coaching practice?
It changed it in a few different ways. The biggest being that in success principles, in that success training, you're the one who's doing most of the talking. In true coaching, it's the client who's doing most of the talking, and you're just guiding them. You're helping them open doors. You're helping them look under rocks to find out why this is or why that's the way it is. Now, granted, when you're in the success mode, you're more of a counselor, and you're giving them various exercises to do to get themselves out of a specific rut. And I've integrated them, I think, pretty well, because I do think there are times where we need to be more of a teacher than a coach. And there's times when you need to be full on coach and not a teacher, because the biggest lessons we learn in life come from failures and figuring shit out on our own. And when you can get someone to the point where their brain has processed what they've done wrong to get where they are and what they need to do to get out of it, it becomes life changing for them. It becomes transformational for them, in that they now have the solution to that they came up on their own. They came up with on their own, just by having this coach there to guide them through the process of introspection and asking the right questions and reflecting back what they heard that person say.
Yeah, that is so true. Absolutely, and it's been my experience with coaching as well. I'm wondering if you have this interesting perspective. And I come at this from the point that there's a lot of coaches out there who went through a life coach certification training, are certified coaches, maybe accredited through the ICF even. There's some people who went through a non accredited program, like maybe the success training, and you just run with that. And there's people who went through no formal training whatsoever and still call themselves a coach and do that stuff. So I'm wondering if you can share your experience with what those three tracks might look like for someone who maybe just bases their coaching on life experiences, someone who has some kind of training but not a formally accredited program, and then you went the extra route and said, oh, because you've done all three, right? You started a little bit of coaching, you realized, oh, I'm already kind of doing this, then you went through that success training, and then you still went ahead and went through Lumia to get actually credentialed as a life coach. So what do those three different paths look like from your experience, and what do those different programs add to you as a coach? Like, how has that changed your ability to coach other people?
Sure. So, if you look at that growth trend there, right? Um, as older adults, we all have our life experiences and we all have lessons to share. That's if you've been paying attention. If you haven't been paying attention, you're going through life on autopilot, then dude, just sit on the bench and let the adults in the room do the talking. Um, but we all have lessons to share, and sometimes those lessons are useful to others, and maybe not. the maybe not part is the important part, because we all have different experiences on how we perceive the world around us. So that's where that non-trained mindset falls short in not understanding that concept. And then you think about, you know, going through a coaching training, but non accredited training, which is very enlightening. And it teaches you a lot of different practices and principles to share, right? But because coaching is a very unregulated business, or practice, um, there's no baseline for understanding as a customer or potential client of who you're signing on with. And that's where the accreditation comes in. And that's where the schooling, ACF and Lumia come into play, because they teach you that baseline of understanding of the actual practice of coaching and getting people to understand what they've done through reflection, through introspection, through inquiry, through being curious, quite honestly, where the other ones don't. You know, you don't. And don't get me wrong. I actually know a couple of coaches that have not gone through that training and who are making good money. Are they good coaches or not? Just debatable. But they're out there in business. They're making good money and they have a thriving business. Um, Knowing what I know, I would never do that, because that is just like fertilized, fodder for imposter syndrome, and not understanding who you really are and who you serve and what you need to do. And that's why I chose to go that extra step and go through that extra training and really understand the processes and practices and modalities of actually helping someone understand, you know, how to get from point A to point B, and how to come out of, you know, being able to live their lives as the best person they could be, being aware and being observant to the world around them and how they respond to all that stimulus.
Yeah, the way I look at it too, and I come from the medical world, and everything has to have credentials. I mean, you can't even do CPR on a dead person in the hospital unless you had CPR, your BLS training. So everything has to have credentials. So that's kind of what started me on this path of saying I need to be credentialed. But the other part that I learned was there is so much science behind the human psyche, the way we think, the way we form thoughts, and change our neuronal pathways, right, over
Mm-hmm.
time, that can really
Neuroplasticity, yeah.
influence. Yeah, absolutely. The way you it really changes the way you approach coaching then, knowing all these things. So it was very much educational on truly how coaching should be approached, from a more scientific background, which I'm a scientist at heart, so I like that stuff. So looking at these formal curriculums, I have a different question for you, sort of in the same vein, but a question that keeps coming up amongst coaches is the idea of these pre-defined packages that we sell, versus true ICF style coaching, which doesn't have an agenda, right? The client brings the agenda, and this is what we're going to talk about today. With maybe some overarching goals that we try to establish over the course of the relationship, but there's no predefined 8-week or 12-week or whatever course. So where do you stand on that? Because I feel like the success training that you had is probably in line with, this is a predefined package, this is your curriculum, this is everything you're going to learn in these few weeks that we're together, versus ICF style coaching, which is what we learned at Lumia, saying the client brings the agenda and we're just going to run with it. So where do you stand on that dichotomy?
I stand on the latter. Um, I think a
The
lot of
latter,
that, the
says
latter,
says the
yes,
fireman. Yeah.
the latter, yeah. There you go. Thank you. Um, I stand on that, in that the customer brings the agenda. Um, one of the biggest hurdles that coaches have to do is market themselves. What is all that packaging? Marketing. Same thing with serving a niche. It's marketing. It has no bearing on how you affect change in your client. You know, you could say, like you said, you have a package of 4 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks, 12, a year, whatever it is, and you're going to go through X, Y, and Z in that process. When you come out, you're going to be a butterfly. What if I didn't want to be a butterfly if I started this process? Sorry for the caterpillar, but that's where you're going to end up. But when we try to, how do I put this? When we try to put our own thought or our own spin on what a person needs for them to be the best person they are, that's not authentic. You're not building that person. You're building another version of you. You're building another version of your thinking. So to try to create a package around what someone thinks they need is not is doing a disservice to that client or to anyone who wants to be a potential client of yours. So while that marketing and niching is sometimes necessary to get the attention of the people who you want to serve, once you get into a conversation with a client and they're listening to you, that stuff is out the window. It's gone. It's useless. And then so I've actually and I've done this in the past probably 3 to 6 months have been changing a lot of my messaging or all my messaging away from that. Now, granted, you still need to, if you're doing a lot of work on social media to reach out to clients, you still need to come up with the various problems that people are trying to solve, because ultimately that's what we're doing here. We're solving problems. Um, you still need to put that stuff out there and hope that that resonates with somebody. But when I first started, I would say, "Oh, I support IT professionals in trying to get promotions or make more money, yada yada yada." Crap. It's marketing. It's just marketing. And okay, fine. Some people are really good marketers, and they're the ones that are making money. But who are they helping? Themselves.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. I think I think the niching it can help because it's a group of people that you know best and can help them best. But a true life coach, a well trained true life coach, should be able to help anybody. Now, that can be hard to market then, right? I can help anybody. And then everybody is like, well, who do you actually help? So having some niching, I think, helps with not just the marketing, but also ultimately improves the people that you're trying to help. It's the same reason that we have medical specialists, right? When I, just even from my own experience, in my general surgery training, in the 5 years that I spent there, I had almost an entire year of vascular surgery over the 5 years through the different rotations I've been on. So, I could be a pretty good basic vascular surgeon, but realistically, I'm not as good as someone who only does vascular surgery day in, day out and has that experience, right? So I think the niching aspect makes sense. It's the packaging that I find challenging myself because just like you said, you're trying to fit someone in a box that you design, and so really, are you just creating another version of yourself? So I don't really the idea of packaging never really appealed to me, other than for marketing, saying, look, I've got this program that helps X, Y, and Z, and here's something, because people do like something tangible, something concrete. If you just float an idea that's sort of philosophical, people don't like to latch onto that. And so, I think it's like you said, it's really just a marketing strategy for us coaches to put ourselves out there, connect with a certain group of people. But like you said, everybody has problems, and if we could still, you know, find those problems and attack those problems and present those problems in a marketing kind of way, that should still help us push ourselves out there in a way for people to find us. So knowing that right, we all have different problems as coaches that we like to solve. Who are your ideal clients? Who do you like to work with in your coaching practice?
I like to work with people who are having difficulty in transition, whether it be professional, relationship based, something in their personal life, retirement, just starting out in the workforce. Um, there's a lot of change that we go through in our lives. And because we haven't done it before, we end up freezing. You stand there like asking the question, well, what do I do? Or better yet, how did I get here? You know, it's like I was chugging along. I went through college, like, great, I'm professional now. I got to go get a job. I've never had a job before. I delivered pizza and newspapers. Now I got to go and get a real job. Well, what do I do? Oh, you could talk to a career coach, or if you write a resume and got to do your CV and your intro letter. And holy crap, what the hell is that all about? There's, a buddy of mine wrote a book called Shit We Don't Learn in College. And there's a lot of really simple wisdom in there that people don't think about until they're in a place of needing it. And transitions in our lives are those times where it's like, wow, I got to learn something new, or my whole life is going to get upended because of this. How do I get there? How do I navigate this? And those are my favorite clients. Recently, I've had a few clients that have been dealing with some really tough relationships and breakups, and dealing with the aftermath of that. Which they're also seeing therapists at the same time. So it's not like I'm trying to coach them through their past. But it really, that's a big piece of getting people to move forward too, because you've had someone that's been part of your life for a year, 2 year, 10 year, 15, 20 years, and it's like all of a sudden now they're gone. Okay, what do I do? How did I get here? And you help them answer those questions.
Yeah, one thing you just mentioned about college, for example, that really, if you look at the academic institutions in general, even high school, everyone, and this goes back to our discussion on coaching packages. Everyone is individual. Everyone learns at a different pace. We have different interests, different things that we want to pursue in life. And so the idea that everybody finishes high school in 4 years, that a bachelor's degree takes 4 years, a master's degree takes 3 years, to me, really is, again, goes back to the marketing piece, right? Not it really, from a pure academic standpoint, you should obtain that bachelor's degree when you have obtained the requisite knowledge to get there. And some people can do that in 2 years, some people can do that in 6 years. But to make everybody take 4 years, it really does most people an injustice, and it really just becomes a way for institutions to, make money. It really has nothing to do with the academic progress the individual students are making, because now you have to follow a predefined curriculum that is a one size fits none approach, and it's the same thing in coaching. It's kind of interesting that you bring that up. That there are so many things in college. I mean, I'll tell you, I spent 14 years in school to become a trauma surgeon, and I have learned more on YouTube in the last 2 years than I ever did in a formal school setting, right?
I find that troubling. You're cutting people open and you're learning more on YouTube. Oh boy. YouTube's really getting a big plug today. I think and with your experience, I'd like your insight on this. Is that I think one of the best things that helps college students today is internships. Is that on the job training, whether they're getting paid for it or not. Make that part of the educational process, because you know when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, that's how your brain learns. That's how it retains. That's how it operates. That's how it processes. That's how it builds those neural pathways that allow you to get better at that task.
Yeah, no, and this I think goes to just the actionable piece of our learning experience. At some point, we have to stop reading and learning and studying and actually applying the knowledge in order to build experience, and that's where internships, for example, come in. And that's the point where a lot of people are stuck in this analysis paralysis, where they feel like I have to learn more before I'm comfortable doing something, when you already know everything you need to know. You already have everything you need to succeed within you. You just need that confidence boost to push you over the edge, to say, no, start doing, right? Stop learning, start doing. I think that's exactly what you're trying to get at with the internships. At some point, you just have to take action. The only way to begin is by beginning, and right, you just have to start somehow, one step at a time. You just have to apply the knowledge you already have, and it's only when you have some experience and you start realizing where the holes in your knowledge really are, that you can then go back and really fine tune what you need to learn. But if you just try to gobble everything in at first, you're really not learning a whole lot, because you don't even know how to apply any of the knowledge. And it's the same thing, in the surgical world. So you asked for my experience, and I can tell you that I thought for the longest time I needed to read surgical textbooks like crazy in order to be prepared for the next day in my training, when in reality, all I needed to do was show up and do the work. And when I realized, oh, these are things I don't know much about, then I can go back and open the textbook and figure out what it is that I'm missing and really fine tune the knowledge. But I just had to go out and do it. And surgery is a bit special because it is a mechanical procedural specialty, right? We go out there with our knives and scissors and whatnot and actually do things with our hands. And the only way to do that is by actually doing it. Whereas in other medical specialties, where a lot of it is true brain trust up here that you have to build, but even then you have
Practice.
to go out
Yeah.
and see patients, right? You have to go out and see patients and talk to patients and identify problems that you really don't know much about, to figure out where to hone your knowledge. But it goes right back to what you're saying. You need that practical experience at some point in your life, before you can
Yeah,
really
it,
apply it.
it's having the courage to take that messy action, right? If you're waiting until you have 100% of the information you need to make a decision or to act on something, you're waiting too long. You miss the bus. Okay, 70 to 80% is usually enough to take action on something or to take a risk, right? That courage comes along. I have this phrase that I use, that sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of blind courage to start something. And you just have to say, yo, grit down, bear down, say, you know what? I'm going for this right now. I'm asking this person out on a date. I'm applying for this job that's 3 steps above what I normally go for. You know, you just need to have that courage to do that in the face of fear. We're all afraid of stuff. You do need to do that in the face of fear to actually take steps to move forward. Especially, like you said, if you've been paralyzed by overanalyzing, with the steps there, like I said, that 100%, you're gonna stay there. You're not going to go forward. You need to take that. You need to take those risks.
Yeah, and you mentioned, not taking action until you have 100% of the knowledge. The problem is we live in an imperfect world, and you don't even know what 100% of the knowledge is that you need to gain. And so you gobble up all this stuff, right, without ever knowing what it is that you really need to know, which you only get through experience. So, an interesting aspect there that you mentioned, the fear and that freeze response that we have in the face of fear, coming from firefighting to some degree. And granted, you haven't been active in that, but
No.
I'm curious if you have some insights from that world, right? What does it take for people to voluntarily go into a burning building to get people out, or extinguish a fire? I mean, that's a tremendous amount of fear that I think people have. So, what does it take to overcome that? Because I mean, it's an extreme example, but I think some of the principles that you would learn in that scenario, are probably something that we can apply in other scenarios as well.
Mhm. And you could apply that to being a police officer, being a soldier, you know, any of those high risk roles. You need to have a good foundation of who you're serving and want to serve. You'll hear Marines, different Marines say, "We're here to help the people who cannot help themselves." When you have that mindset of service, of saying, "No one else is going to go do this job, I have to." when you have that, then you could run into that building. Then you could pull your weapon and be able to defend others. Um, but it's also the people around you. It's that team that you have around you. You know, who you've trained with, who you've worked with, who you've served on other deployments with. You know, they're the ones who you learn that that's who you're fighting for, or it's who you're fighting with. And those things, in my opinion, are what help and drive those people due to what the jobs and tasks that they do. You know, and who you know, you'll never hear any of them say, "Oh, I wasn't afraid." Bullshit, you weren't afraid. You were just you were overcoming it. You were facing your fear down. You know, there's fear of running into any burning building. There's fear of a cop doing a traffic stop. They always have that, but that's where training comes in, and that's where knowing that I'm here to serve somebody else. I'm here to serve something bigger than myself that allows them to actually be able to do that job.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, the serving other people. I think as humans, we have some innate desire to serve other people, to want to serve other people. And that's what brings community together. That's what creates leadership. That's what creates these bonds that go on forever. That's what creates friendships. That's probably where family is even really defined by. And really the reason you do what you do goes back to what we discussed in the beginning. It's that why, right? The Simon Sinek's why are you doing this? So uh let me ask you a question out of my simple networking book, to kind of maybe bring that back into perspective a little bit. um who or what is your source of inspiration?
um, my kids, especially. Give me 1 second here. My kids, especially, are my source of inspiration, um, and my wife. It's my family. It's my town. It's my community. That's who I'm here to ultimately here to serve. Um, you know, as far as inspiration, it's a tough one. You know, it's probably the people who have come before, who I've seen do this well, um, and trying to stand on their shoulders. You know, trying to take it to the next level. Trying to, you know, I think the role of coaches all around is to try to make the world a better place. You know, and I think we would all agree that we need to do that in some way, shape, or form. You know, if you know, we people say, "Oh, I want to go and change the world," that's like boiling the ocean. But if we all pick up the flag and say, "I'm going to change the world around me," and we all have a mindset like that, that's where the real change happens on a grand scale, right? So with us as coaches, if we're able to do that and affect as many people as possible, that's changing the world.
I agree. We all have our own little part to play in making the world as a whole a better place for all of us. So I totally resonate with you on all of that. I guess in that same vein, what is your favorite motto or tagline maybe to live by?
Mm. I probably have about 100 of them, and none of them are coming to mind right now.
Because you put it on the
um,
spot.
yeah, right. Because you put me on the spot. Um, I mentioned take messy action a moment ago. That's one. Um, uh, you know, life is 10% what happens to you, and 90% what you make of it. Um, there's serve others. Yeah, there's probably a bunch along those lines that really come into play and will pop into my head at various times during the day, just trying to help me get that next task or that help out that next client, or even just ask that next question.
Oh, sure, absolutely. That's always I think especially as coach trainees, that's always the question, right? Am I asking the right question? Like, what question should I be asking here, right? And it goes back to what we are saying earlier. That only comes with experience and trying to figure out what it is that you're actually trying to achieve in that session. Learning which questions will really move the session forward, help the client move forward, right? All right, easier question, also out of my book. What's a place you've never been to but really want to visit?
Yeah, that would be like something like Alaska, just for its sheer rawness of being unsettled. And not that I like the cold, but being as cold as heck up there and being able to survive and something like that. Would I ever go out? I mean, would I visit it as a tourist? Yeah. Would I go out and live in the bush? Probably not. I think we've. I'm not one of those people who needs to prove that to myself. Um, Although, hey, we grow and change in different ways. Who knows? That may change as well.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think just the idea of being open to those experiences and wanting to have those experiences, just to be able to say, oh, I've done that. Now I have a better understanding of why people might want to do that is so important in each of our lives, right? For us to be able to see things from someone else's perspective is so incredibly powerful. And that's one of the great things of being a coach and being able to have those experiences or even having these conversations with other coaches for me here on this podcast, right? I get to have so many perspectives and experiences with people through these people, through the guests like you, that otherwise may not have on my own.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sure
Speaking of
you. I'm
guests,
sure you get an earful from a lot of very good coaches here.
oh, for sure, for sure. But it's truly inspiring. It's changing me. It's humbling me. It's really a fun part of my day to be able to have this experience with people like you, to share their experience with me, and share your experience, for me. It's absolutely wonderful. The other thing I've done, started doing weeks and weeks ago now, is I have every guest ask the next guest a question, not knowing who that guest is. And what's really fascinating, more often than not, the questions are just absolutely perfect for whoever's being asked the question. So, Thomas Rosenberg, who is a phenomenal somatic coach, is asking, "Who are you becoming, and why is that important to you?"
It's funny. That's what actually one of the things that I teach is not necessarily where you want to go, but who do you want to become. Um, who am I becoming, and why is that important to me? Who am I becoming is the best version of me, um, and that's and no one can be totally. I'm going to use the term aware 124 hours a day, 7 days a week. It just doesn't. We don't have the mental capacity to do that. I don't think. I think there are times where we do live on autopilot and work off of our habits, right? Which we all develop, and those neurons that fire together. Um, but to be able to take every moment as it comes, and to treat that moment with the reverence that it needs, that it requires, to live every moment as it is, to be present. Um, that's who I'm trying to become. Where I'm living for right now, not worrying about the future, not worrying about all the lovely things going on in the world. That's facetious, obviously, um, but there is a lot of beauty out there at the same time. But yeah, that's who I would say I'm becoming as a person who lives for right now.
That's amazing. So it's your turn. You get to ask the next guest a question, not knowing who that person is, or I don't even know when we're recording, but you
Yeah.
have the floor.
Um, if there's a question I was going to ask the next guest, what is the what breakthrough goal are you setting for yourself to complete in the next 6 months that's going to exponentially move you forward as a coach or a person?
Awesome. I have that written down, and I'll be sure to ask your
I'm gonna
questions
have to
to the
watch the
end.
next one just to see what the answer is there.
Exactly right. So does everyone else. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Kyle, awesome, super incredible conversation. I'm really glad we were able to resurrect this,
Yep.
despite all
Me
the
too.
technical challenges we had before. So thanks again for being here. How can people reach out to you? How can they find you? How can they connect?
They could reach out to me on my email, which is kylo at thehumanscoach.com, or my website being thehumanscoach.com. Or you could grab me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of daily posting on LinkedIn, and that's a great way to reach out to me. And happy to have a chat about anything big, small. You're curious about coaching. You don't know what it is. You don't know what to expect. If you haven't been watching these podcasts, that's a good way to learn. But if you want to talk with somebody live, reach out. Happy to help you.
That's awesome. I'll make sure all your links are in the description for the show so people can reach out more easily.
Thank you.
And yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for doing this. I'm really happy. This honestly, I don't remember much of the last conversation because it was so long ago, but I think we did a fine job resurrecting it, and I
Yeah.
think we hit all the highlights. So thank you.
Yeah. And actually, I want to share my gratitude with you as well, Felix. This is a great service that you're providing to coaches to get their thoughts out into the world, and but it also makes us think too. What does everyone else want to know, and what can we share with them that's going to really reflect well on coaching as a practice as well as us as individuals. So thank you for doing that, man. Applause.
All right, I really hope you enjoyed that. The questions that I asked towards the end are from my new book, The Simple Networking Tool. It's a great book that redefines how we network. It's all about who someone is and not what they are. So if you want to get your own book, it's available on Amazon. If you want to learn more, there's videos about it here on YouTube. So you can check out this amazing new social science experiment. I'm so excited for it. If you do get a book and you do start your own, please let me know how it goes and what your experience is like. I'm working on the second edition and I want to make it the best one yet. So be sure to tag me, let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching.